Hi, my name is Ayadar Kaiwa, and I am going to talk about a few different things within a secure network architecture design assignment. So one of which is going to be the corporate infrastructure diagram, and I'm just going to kind of take you through the whole entire process and what exactly I had created, as well as the GVM scan reports for Windows 11, as well as the additional VM that I had created, which was the Windows Server 2022. And then also, lastly, the security issues of advanced networks. So to start off, I have the corporate infrastructure diagram here, and I'm going to take you through it from left to right here. And to start off, I'm going to begin by talking about the first icon here that you see here, which is the cloud. This cloud is representing the internet, which is going to be followed by all these different things that you can see followed by it. That's why it has to be the first one, because it's going to stem off from it. So the next one, the first device that I created was the router. This is the first router, and I did put this one in as a pfSense. The next thing that you see is a dotted line that's red, and it's basically acting as a separate area, and it's labeled as DMZ. The reason it's DMZ is because it's a demilitarized zone. A demilitarized zone is basically acting as a buffer between the internal network that you see here and then the external outside network, which was the internet, which is an untrusted public network. And we need this by starting off with the firewall. So the firewall here is what I put in to kind of kick off or kickstart the DMZ. And then next we have an intrusion detection system. And a really good one to put that I chose was Snore for this one. The next one is an intrusion prevention system. And this one I put in as Suricata. And the IPS is basically there as a security measure, and it's there so it can monitor anything that's coming in and out as traffic, and it's also supposed to detect malicious activity, anything that's happening as unusual. So then it kind of stems off from here. I have two different servers, and then it just kind of runs through. As you can tell, it kind of stems off to the proxy server, and then down from it is the DHCP server, and then going right straight through is going to be the email server. That email server is going to go ahead and it's going to be followed by a firewall, and that's where it's going to end, the DMZ zone. So then we go into the next device that I have here, and that's going to be the second router that we need, and that router is going to stem off to all these different things that I'm going to talk about. So starting off is all these different switches. So within this assignment, we are supposed to have different departments, and then in these departments, we need 25 people within it. So that's what each one is representing, the different departments that we have here. And I kind of labeled them all off as one of them as being marketing department, an IT department, a sales department, the finance department, and even the HR department. So these are all the different departments that we have. But before this, we need the switches, and that's where the switches kicked in. So I put different switches, as you can see, switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, switch 4, switch 5, and they're all going in, and they're connected into the departments. And then we need a whole different air gap system, and that's just basically something that's completely separate and away from everything else, and that is where you see the firewall. So we needed a firewall to kind of just go in, and we're just kind of transitioning smoothly into the next part here. So the firewall's there, and now we need another switch because we're going into a whole different, the R&D department. And in here I kind of put in everything that we kind of were using within our assignment. So the different type of servers here, so like the Windows 11 virtual machine that we had before, and then the Windows Server 2019, the Ubuntu, and even Kali Linux. And as you can tell, each one has an IP address, and these IP addresses actually came from the actual IP address that I was able to get within each one. So I went in there and was able to get each of their IP addresses, and this is the corporate infrastructure diagram. So now we're going to go into the GVM scan reports, and these were created through the Kali Linux system. And in the Kali Linux, we were able to go in and do a GVM startup, once we were able to access that, we were able to open up the Greenbone. Greenbone is basically there acting as a vulnerability management. So in that program, we're able to go ahead and make a target. Once a target is made to this VM, we're able to then go and make a task and actually make that GM scan, run that scan, and now we have our report. And then I made two, so one for Windows 11, and then later I'm going to discuss the one that I made for Windows Server 2022, which is the additional VM that I chose to create. So let's talk about it. So to start off, we have the GVM scan report for Windows 11. So I just kind of included the host scanned IP address here, which was the 192.168.1.50, as you can see. And it's just kind of going through what was detected. So the number of issues that were detected were quite low for this report. There was only one, and it was a very low severity vulnerability. It got a score of 2.6. So it's nothing to be too worried about, but it's also not something that should be just completely ignored, because it can cause some issues, which we will be discussing. This one that they had detected was the timestamps, and this actually allows the intruders or attackers to kind of figure out the uptime, to see how long a user was online, and this can actually let them use this information for quite a number of different things. So we're just kind of continuing into the report here, and one of the mitigation that was found is being able to disable the TCP timestamps. And the method that is used for this that they kind of suggested was utilizing the IP packets to kind of detect these little small lags for the responses of the timestamps. So overall, even though this is not an immediate threat, this shouldn't be completely disregarded as well. The reason being is that the attackers can manipulate the timestamps if they are able to gain access to this. So they can do false timelines, they can tamper with the records, they can make things look like they happened earlier or later than they actually did. They can do whole sorts of different things. So this is why that this threat shouldn't be exactly ignored, because it can still take a big hit to your system. So next up, we have the GVM scan report for the Windows Server 2022. Again, this is just a summary, and it's just kind of telling you that, hey, we found something. So here in the Windows Server 2022 GVM scan report, we have the IP address of 192.168.1.151. And the threat level here, again, we have a 2.6, something very, very low, but once again, we shouldn't ignore it. The type of vulnerability, once again, we have a TCP timestamps. And basically, again, this is something that shouldn't be ignored, because it is disclosing information that can be utilized in a malicious manner by attackers. And it says here that 80% quality of detection was found as well. So continuing into this report, once again, just because it's low severity doesn't mean that it's not going to cause any damage. It can still help those attackers get information through system fingerprinting. It can even do timing attacks such as patch cycles and so on. It can even be detected through the same process as previously mentioned, which was utilizing those IP packets with those tiny lags between them. And again, we have the mitigation here where we disable those timestamps. So overall, it's really important to keep in mind that these can still cause a lot of damage, even though it's not too severe for a threat. So the last thing I'm going to touch on here is the security issues and implications. So for the advanced networks, they are posing challenges, and it is important to talk about. So starting off is the current networks, and these current networks, we are seeing weaknesses such as TCP's timestamps, which are disclosing information due to lack of built-in security. And this is actually something we just saw in the GVM scan report. So this is something definitely that should be on our radar, because clearly they are there. They're small in risk, but they are important as well because they can still cause damage. Another one is the Wi-Fi. So basically attackers can make up these different Wi-Fis, and what it's causing is downgrade attacks, allowing those attackers to use those rogue access points through the Wi-Fi. Another last one is the cloud. So the cloud is definitely causing data leaks as well. As for the emerging networks, so for the emerging networks, the faster networks that are emerging are the 6G, and this is creating actual new avenues of attacks. So this is something that's definitely important as well to kind of recognize as well. Another one is the software controlled network, such as the SDN. This is basically technologies are letting networks be managed by these software, and this is actually allowing the possibility for hackers to come in, and if they're able to control the whole thing, they would be able to control the entire network, which can be really detrimental to the system and to the organization as well as a whole. So overall, it's clear to see that there is a need for more preventative security strategy. And one of the few that I wanted to touch on here is the zero trust security principles. Also having a more robust encryption devices, that would be something that could be really helpful in preventing things like this. And another one is having broader and more advanced threat detections. So as we're kind of getting new technology and new emerging networks, it is important to kind of keep up with that by getting more advanced threat detections, and that would overall help with these security issues and implications. So that concludes this presentation. Here are the references that were kind of where I was touching on those security issues and implications that were mentioned in the previous slide. And that is the wrap up for this presentation, and thank you for listening.